the stronger the pack, the stronger the wolf, the stronger the wolf, the stronger the pack. So if we bulletproof our community, whether fitness, athletic, we're all going to benefit from it.
Welcome to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast. Our guest today is a renowned strength and conditioning coach that came out of the Athletic Truth Group, who has trained thousands of people around the world with the main purpose to improve pain-free movement. He promotes the knees over toes and backwards movement training methods he co-developed with Ben Patrick, aka the knees over toes guy. He currently works with athletes in the NBA, NFL, and UFC, as well as pros around the world from age 8 to 86, as well as with many doctors, physical therapists, trainers, and coaches by training and educating them in ATG methodologies.
I don't do social media for clout. I do it to provide value. Her teaching me early on, life wasn't fair, and you are how you respond to that unfairness. The backwards movement is just the tip of the iceberg.
Why do you think there's benefits for us as humans to kind of be training and developing, moving in the backwards direction?
Yeah, what I focus on is just rebuilding that ability to be childlike and move pain-free. It doesn't matter how much you pay, who you learn from, you're still gonna have to put the work in. The work is what will set you free.
So please welcome Mr. David Mariani to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast.
David Mariani, I have said that correctly, haven't I?
Yes.
Thanks for coming down.
One of the few. Usually it's butchered.
Okay, thanks for coming down to Newport Beach. We were due to meet on Friday, but you're kind of thick in it with some UFC or Bellator fighters. Is that something you can discuss? What happened?
Yeah, it was. This happens. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen when they have their camps. They have to have guys that they spar against, that they fight against. So when you open that up, it's not just training in the weight room where there's low risk. You're starting to develop that high risk. We don't see it as much in basketball. We do see some injuries from being competitive and playing the sport, but it's not as direct as something like practicing sparring or practicing grappling, because one wrong position pushed the wrong way, all of a sudden you're dealing with somebody's kneecap being dislocated, and then that person is out for the rest of the duration of the camp, which is sad, but it's part of the sport.
What are you spending, what's a typical week look like for you then?
Well, it depends on who I'm currently working with. So I specialize in person, and now we see this shift to push everything online, which is fine. It's just not my area. I still work at my best when I'm with these world-class athletes, and I'm working out with them. Even with the fighter, I'm going through his daily schedule with him. Okay, wake up at this time, first workout at this time, second workout at this time, third workout at this time. Because I've spent so many years as a basketball athlete, I don't know what it's like to be an MMA athlete. So spending this time going through it with them, I still won't have a level of understanding as pro fighters, but I'll have better of an understanding than just sitting and looking for research studies that say, okay, this is good to do and this is not.
So where did you get your knowledge base and experience from? Tell us a little bit about your background into what allowed you to do what you're doing today then.
Yeah, so my background was is a product of my parents. My dad is an internal medicine and pulmonology doctor, and my mom was a nurse. But it was their lack of playing sports is what drove me to not only sports, but when I started getting injured, to try to find answers to kind of offset those injuries. And they had always told me, hey, we didn't play sports, so if you want to do it, you got to find out the answers on your own. Which at the time I thought as a kid, well, that's kind of not the nicest, but now I look back and I'm like very thankful, because everything that I'm doing right now, I'm doing it because I'm passionate and I want to do it, versus, had they pushed me to do sports, I might be working in sports and not be motivated or, not be dialed in.
Right. In terms of your methods, I did some research online, and the Athletic Truth Group came up. So tell us a little bit about them and their methods and what's behind that system.
Yeah, so I came together with Ben Patrick, who's knees over toes guy. 5 years ago, I found him on social media. He had just started his social media, and I had yet to do social media in the avenue of business. I had just used it to kind of follow up with friends and whatnot. So when I found him, he right away was adamant, like, hey, we're all going online. ATG, the gym, is going to be no longer, it's just going to be an online coaching service. So he started pushing me to do online. We had created a basketball app for youth athletes, and it did well for about a year. And then he was like, you know what, this is starting to be competitive with my program, so why not just come and help me write the full ATG program, which is what a lot of you probably see it as today. If you sign up for the program, you'll be not only given the program, but you'll have access to coaching. So all that programming and coaching is based off of my last 15, 16 years working with athletes, and Ben's 12, 13 years working with athletes. So, it was just two guys that stayed in the trenches. So two guys that stayed working out like they would train their athletes, and we were able to find answers that way.
So how did you bump into Ben then? Because did you both have a gym down in Florida?
He had the gym down in Florida. I was working with some of the top athletes in the world, and then I was starting to work with influencers. So then he had seen one of the influencers doing the stuff, reached out, hey, could you bring him down to Florida with you? The influencer at that time had to go to see Floyd Mayweather in Vegas. So I was like, all right, you go there, and then I'm going to go there. So I spent a month and a half, 4 years ago down in Florida, growing and learning with these guys. And that's kind of how I got my start with ATG, but then I was able to implement a lot of the things that I was doing directly on my own, and then some of the stuff I was doing with Ben, almost like a trial and error period, especially these last 3 years. So we were able, through our own failures, figuring out, okay, this amount of backwards movement is good, maybe this amount is too much. Same with the knees over toes stuff. This amount of knees over toes is good, maybe this is too much. So it's just perfecting that scale is essentially what we built ATG to be, is whether you're the top athlete in the world or you're 85-year-old grandma with severe knee pain, you're doing the same workouts, just scaled differently.
Right. I understand that you were there was some influence from Poliquin.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about that, because his name comes up quite a bit, and he's someone I never got to meet personally, and I unfortunately I didn't ever get to interview him, but he sounded like an interesting guy,
Yep.
and kicked off, was very influential on a lot of things.
Yep, and he, from what I understand, the what we call the ATG split squat was the Poliquin split squat. That's what the Poliquin people have told me, because I don't have any relation or history working with Poliquin. Ben had met with him, paying $3,000 for the hour or whatever it was for his time back in the day. But I had learned from Cal Dietz, who's the head of kinesiology at University of Minnesota, and then a guy named Dino Lorenzi, who's one of the top physical therapists. He works for the MLB. He's like the MLB's go-to physical therapist. So those two guys, they didn't create the program for me, but they challenged me to look in areas that nobody else was looking. So when I found Ben on Instagram 5 years ago, I knew, okay, this, I'm already doing knees over toes. Ben's showing that I can do it without all the bells and whistles, all the expensive equipment. I work with a lot of low-income athletes that can't afford expensive training. So finding something like the toe raises that we do with our butt on the wall and strengthening that tibialis, you don't need a gym membership, you don't need gym equipment, and you can offset, a lot of knee pain, and you can increase your performance by something simple like that.
Right. It sounds like you kind of have these different coaches, and they have camps, and is there this kind of competition amongst people in terms of where did these ideas come from, and this is my kind of idea, and is there a little bit of that kind of goes on in that community?
Yeah, there's a lot of that, especially with Poliquin's people towards Ben. Now, Poliquin's people haven't been like that towards me, because I don't reference Charles. Like I said, with the exception of that Poliquin split squat, I'm not duplicating anything, where Ben duplicated a lot. So I think there's a little bit more of them wanting answers from Ben, whereas they see me as, okay, he's promoting one of Poliquin's movements, but he's doing it in a way that is not damaging to any communities, whether it's fitness or sports. I'm very forthcoming with my social media, almost to the point where some people are turned off. Well, I thought I was going to get your proprietary blend that you don't share with anybody. And I said, well, that doesn't exist. That used to exist when I used to be insecure, but then when I started getting more confident in myself and the training of others, I realized, okay, majority of these athletes from around the world that are on social media, they can't afford training. So who's going to provide them with helpful information? If it's not me, it's probably not going to be anybody. So I had to kind of put myself out there on the edge a little bit. And there's been pros and cons to it. It's not nothing I've done, within reason has been 100% successful. A lot of it, fails, and then I learn, and it fails, and then I learn.
Introducing the next big thing in functional training, the Escape Barrow, a revolutionary training tool that combines a loaded farmer's carry with a sled push to develop hip, grip, and core strength. Developed in partnership with Pete Holman, inventor of the TRX Rip Trainer and Nautilus Glute Drive, the Escape Barrow can be rolled, pushed, dragged and carried. The Escape Barrow packs a punch with an impressive load capacity of 440 pounds, and with a 2-stage galvanized paint covering process, it's also ideal for outdoor use. So head over to escapefitness.com/barrow. That's escapefitness.com/barrow to find out more. Enjoy the rest of this episode.
What do you think, and I don't want to spend the whole podcast talking about Ben, but he obviously blew up. He was on Joe Rogan and suddenly came out of nowhere and everybody was talking about this method and driven by social media. What do you think what it was about that kind of got everybody's attention? Because was it that it just really solved a big problem and everybody suddenly improved as a result of that? Was it just it challenged a lot of the norm? What do you think that it kind of stuck as it was? And it's still something that I see continues to evolve now.
Probably a combination of a couple different things. Having a social name that goes against traditional science norms is a recipe for clout. Now, I don't do social media for clout. I do it to provide value. Not to say that that's what Ben's doing, but that's what we see with most, whether it's Liver King, Carnivore MD. These are names built to divide people and then grow your audience off of dividing, where I refuse to divide people. If they want to slam my methods, that's one thing, but I'm not gonna go back and forth explaining why I think they're wrong or why I think I'm right. I just provide as much value as I can, and then the athletes, whether it's the top athletes in the world or some kid in India or China, then they decide, okay, what am I gonna do with this information? Because when you're going into these different camps, you're working with these world-class coaches, you're working with world-class athletes, there's a lot of egos that get involved. So the one thing that's probably saved me the most working with all these guys is I'm not easily offended. So when there is a weird situation at some of these camps or with certain coaches, thinking that, oh, this athlete's listening to Dave now more than they listen to me, whatever they throw my way, I just handle it with the tender grace and love that my mom would handle it. That's one of the biggest things that has helped me is her teaching me early on life wasn't fair, and you are how you respond to that unfairness, And it was, when I was a kid, it was really easy caught up in, this is unfair, it should be this way. But it helped me realize, okay, most of what I've seen in business has been unfair, and you can either let it, tear you down, and you can be stuck in it for a long period of time with the potential of never giving out, or you can just, forgive yourself for being in that situation right away, and then learn how to forgive the people that, have been kind of what you would say nasty in the business world. Whether it's taking your ideas and making money off it, or using a program, calling it just your program, not acknowledging the 50-60% that went in from somebody else. That's something that you just have to, okay, that's not the way that the ATG Knees Over Toes program is being talked about is not accurate, but that's not for me to go on my social and be like, no, but I created it. I put more in than Ben put into the program. That doesn't do my brand any good. And collectively as a whole, as a fitness, performance, athletic community, it just sets us back. So it's easier for me to just, okay, this is what they're doing. That's what, that if they want to say it's that way, that's fine. I have to focus on myself and my athletes, and I can't bring any of that negativity or that nastiness around them.
Right. We chatted before we started the interview, and you mentioned this backward training. It's been around for a while. Muhammed Ali was someone that you mentioned. So talk a little bit about this. I'll use the word backward training, but whatever your sort of terminology is for it. But tell me about Muhammed Ali and what he did to kind of kick the idea off.
Yeah, so Sugar Ray Leonard had come to him and said, my knees are hurting. And Muhammad told him, not just for your knee health, but because your sport requires some backwards movement, you need to start running backwards like I've been doing. And to me, that resonates because, I can listen to other coaches, I can listen to Cal or this guy Dino, but nothing resonates with me as an athlete more than seeing one of the greatest athletes promote something. So for Muhammad, that was the backwards movement. For somebody like Larry Bird, Kobe, Michael Jordan, they could all shoot very proficiently with their opposite hand. To me, that's where we need to be looking at as an athletic community. We shouldn't be looking at, okay, rate of force development is everything. Yes, it can tell us a lot, but just like a squat, it can only tell us so much. So we could have two athletes squatting 300 pounds, but one athlete is jumping 40 inches and running a 4.240, and the other one's jumping 20 inches and running a 5.440. So numbers alone don't tell the full tale. It's the whole story, everything that goes into it, and the backwards movement is just the tip of the iceberg. That's how I would get everybody started. Whether they're trying to be Muhammed Ali, or they're trying to be an NBA player, or if they're just trying to be pain-free playing with their kids, or pain-free just in general, the backwards movement. And now I've been doing it for 8 years without really science explaining it. To me,
is that correct? Is science not necessarily caught up with some of these ideas that are being tested?
Yep. And it was a major United States university that had put out the no knees over toes in the 1970s.
Yeah, I was. Was that the Duke study in 78?
Well,
or is that another thing?
Yeah, yeah, it was the Duke study.
Why do you laugh?
Well, because if you look at it, this is one of those things. Again, to me, it's one thing to read and study, but it has to make sense. So if we look at Duke's progression since the 78, Grant Hill, Zion Williamson, Kyrie Irving, all these guys, lower leg non-contact injuries. Okay, that to me says more than the study saying to not do it. The study saying not do it was because when they measured the force on the knees, it was greater when the knee goes over the toe, which, yes, that makes sense. But if you watch any sport, if you break down the film, most of the time you're moving, you're spending with your knee over the toe. So if you're not strong in that position, that's why we have an epidemic of injuries at every level. And the backwards movement is just the least evasive way we can do that because it's just concentric in nature. When we add resistance, we're not getting that eccentric taxing of the nervous system and the muscles. So you can recover from a backwards sled or a backwards walking workout in as little as 3 hours up to 24 hours. Whereas if you do something a little more triphasic, like Cal teaches, like a heavy accentuated squat, it's going to take at least 48 hours, and there's some people that believe it takes more than 72 hours to recover from that. So that's now, this is probably a little long-winded, but now we have Harvard coming on the back end as of last year saying that the backwards movement increases neural pathway connections. We have a motivational doc on YouTube he seems legitimate. He is now saying all these benefits of the going backwards. One of the things I heard was 30% increase in burning of calories versus going forward. But I always tie it back to Muhammad Ali, and then for the ones,
What did he get it from then?
What's that?
What do you think he got it? How did he come
I
up
don't
with
know. I don't know. Somebody was smart enough, but we still haven't seen an athlete at that size move as light on their feet, and all the money we put into research, that tells me something. But a lot of people, if you reference a great athlete, they'll say, well, that's good for him. That's one of the greatest athletes of all time. How does that apply to me? And so that's when I pulled a study that was done 2 or 3 years ago with some of the top high school soccer players in America. For 12 or 16 weeks, they had the one group go forward only sprinting, and they had the one group go backwards only sprinting. At the end of the week, this is what they concluded. The backwards movers not only got faster sprinting backwards, which seems pretty obvious, they're working on it. They got faster going forwards in the forwards group, and they had 4 times the amount of increase in vertical over that span that the forwards group had. So that's, however science wants to explain that, that's great. It's probably for minds much greater than mine to explain. For me, I probably excel at not being too smart. It's just, okay, trial and error. The backwards movement, for me, I stuck with it because it felt good and it was working. It helped me get rid of I overcame a torn meniscus MCL in my right leg. I had Oscar Slaughter's. So that was the first real relief. You can floss it. I have these muscle floss bands, and I brought one here today I can show you. You can floss the area. It's a form of blood flow restriction. It sends signals because you're cutting off the area, and then you're doing little movements. It's signaling to the brain, that it needs blood. So when you take the bands off 30, 60 seconds to go any longer, you risk blood clots, but then you take it off and then the brain signals new blood. So you get this rush of new blood, which is great. Now I have to remind people, this is like a lot of what we see in physical therapy. It is like a lateral modality. It may make you feel better momentarily, but it's not going to actually do any of the real healing. The real healing is going to be coming from the backwards movement and then strengthening under the knee.
What do you think, like, if you look at, I suppose, how we've developed and evolved,
Yep.
there's got to have been some reason for us to have done that, because it's clear that some of the things that we're doing, maybe we're not working in balance, I guess. You know, there's probably this imbalance, and there's some reason that it sounds that it's beneficial to go backwards. You even reference, I was listening to some of your stuff, even older people, there's benefits for older people to do backwards training. So what do you think is, if you try to kind of guess, you know, why do you think there's benefits for us as humans to kind of be training and developing, moving in the backwards direction?
Yeah, I think Harvard is starting to touch a base on it. I think there's something to be said about moving along in life without seeing where you're going.
Yeah.
So, with that, okay, it's no matter who starts it, whether it's a kid that just starts it or the top athlete in the world, there is going to be an adaptation phase where it's extremely uncomfortable because they haven't done it. Same with if we have the athlete that we want to bring up their opposite hand shooting, we'll start to have them do stuff around the house, whether it's writing or eating with their opposite hand. You'll see the frustration build up in their head. So there's something freeing about moving and not knowing exactly where you're going, but being confident that what you're doing is working. But then it could be maybe some type of way back. It could be maybe like a yard work, like they were tilling land or pulling soil and they were going backwards and with the machine. I don't know. Maybe also I've thought more realistically as a hunter and gatherer. It was explained to me that we weren't just nonstop sprinting. We were like stalking the prey for a long periods of time. So if we're walking forward for a long periods of time and that gets tiring and mundane, flipping over, going backwards to offset that, and then covering ground as you're stalking this animal. And then when they get tired, because they're not going backwards, you're just going forwards and backwards. You're staying essentially recharged, and then when it's time for them to get tired, that's when it seems like we were doing most of our explosive movement, whether it's throwing something at it or trying to catch it with our hands. And then, that may be where that derives from.
Is there any animals that kind of successfully do that you know of?
I haven't seen it. The internet is an amazing place. I'm sure that somebody that hears this will be like right away, they'll be like, oh, it's the so-and-so animal, but I haven't seen it. It's one of those things that I haven't seen that much of, but we also don't see non-contact leg injuries on animals until they're domesticated in houses with humans. You're not seeing animals laying on the side of the road because they tore an ACL or sprained their ankle. Same with the kids. There's a certain age. Now, I don't have kids. I have 10 nephews and nieces, so I'm able to kind of play with them and study them. There's up into 4, 5, 6 maybe, until they get that first injury or that first traumatic experience, whether it's emotional, mental, or whatever, they're super athletes. So I don't look just at what Muhammed Ali or Kobe Bryant was doing. I'm looking at what these kids are doing. Not only are they sitting on their knees for long periods of time, they'll jump off on top of a couch, land and run around like it's nothing. And if we scale that, it's like us jumping off one of these beams and just landing and running. Well, we lose that ability over time. So what I focus on is just rebuilding that ability to be childlike and move pain-free. It's not the same focus as, okay, I'm pushing for the biggest verticals and the fastest 40s. Not that that's not a good goal to have. It's more of a metric than a goal, but providing value and getting people to move pain-free is the main goal. And everything else is metrics, whether it's the amount of followers, amount of views I'm doing, or who I'm working with. Those are more of the metrics. The goal remains the same. Help people get pain-free, because at 8 years old, I started to sprain my ankles. That turned into Achilles tendonitis, plantar fasciitis, and shin splints before I was 10. And my parents not being involved in sports, it was, you're gonna figure out these answers. So I create on social and I deliver the messages to my athletes based off of what 8 and 9-year-old basketball biology David would have needed. And that's, this basically the simplest way to put it,
When I was a kid, I don't know, I don't remember the age, but I remember for years I had knee pain. And even when I was a teenager, I used to get it a lot. And then I got into it when I was sort of 15. I got into weightlifting. And the thing I avoided was squats because I'm like, this used to give me knee pain. And over time, I started to notice that when I did squats, my knee pain went away. So I'd kind of have a few days where I was good, and then it would come back again. I don't have any knee pain now, and I'm actually a lot older. And it was quite curious because it's almost, when I was watching your stuff, you used the term, it was almost like fluid to the joints. And it was almost like, when I'm doing squats or some kind of leg stuff, it seems as though it's actually healing my pain. And if I don't work out, it comes back, which was counter to what I was thinking, is if I do exercise, it's going to make it worse. So what do you think is going on there?
So this is amazing. This is going to blow people's minds, because when I heard it, it blew my mind. There's a doctor now that's using this research to explain, if you are obese and you work out, you will live longer than somebody who is healthy who doesn't work out. If you are a smoker and you work out, you will live longer than somebody who doesn't smoke and doesn't work out. So there's something about leaning into that discomfort, going into an area that is, it flirts that line of discomfort and pain. And this is, this is sometimes what makes or breaks an athlete. They will start to attach their feelings of pain to what is just discomfort. So sometimes that knee pain, after you work into that range, it's just a little bit more discomfort than it is pain. But you have to go in there and figure that out. And that's, ultimately, with how many people are canceling their knee surgeries, it's great. But I have to remind people when they come to me, hey, can I cancel my knee surgery? I have to remind them, yes, it is 100% on you. You will have to do every rep. You will have to do every backward step. It doesn't matter how much you pay, who you learn from, you're still going to have to put the work in. The work is what will set you free. And with that doctor saying that stuff about the obesity and smoking and living longer if you're working out, once again, Harvard, whoever else wants to come around and explain that in scientific terms, that's for them. For me, it's just, if it works, Bruce Lee, use what is meaningful and disregard the rest. And that's, kind of how I operate with most things.
Yeah, mine was like excruciating at times. It was really bad, and particularly if I'd been in a fixed position, I couldn't sort of bend it. Yeah. And I do legs like probably 4 or 5 times a week now, because it just zero, absolutely zero. Yeah. And it. So do you think then that there is some sort of something going to those joints then, and that is, whether it's blood flow or something that is kind of...
Yes, I'll use the term on my social, regenerative physical training, and people, are sometimes put off by that. But if it's done well, the backwards movement, it will regenerate your knees. And the physical therapist in the 90s said, in order to restabilize joints and to potentially regrow or regenerate cartilage, you need movement, which is pretty widely accepted. But then you also need the compression. So the squats, the Poliquin split squat, the any type of hamstring work that gets into full knee bend. That type of compression, it ties back to the nephews and the nieces, the little ones. They spend almost all their resting time in full knee bend. So there's something there. And with the physical therapist explaining that in that way, it makes sense. Yeah, movement and compression. Okay, now somebody's gonna have to come in and explain step by step on how that could potentially regenerate the cartilage. But that's the way, I've seen it, not just the way the physical therapist explained it. That's how I was able to get rid of my knee pain and injuries. And that's how I'm working currently to help other people get rid of their knee pain and injuries.
Is it? I understand it is, but when we're doing the research, somebody who's working on this sort of mentioned that a lot of this is still in the textbooks, in terms of not putting your knees over toes. Yep. Do you see that something actually changing soon?
Yep. And I have a buddy who's a physician assistant, at the Hospital of Special Surgery, which is in New York. And for about a 3-month span, every week he would get me on this call and he'd say, oh, my buddies are just going to listen in. Sure enough, the buddies start to chime in with every question you could imagine. And I'm thinking, yeah, these guys are a little bit too smart just to be, just random people at the hospital. At the end of the period, he let me know, oh yeah, those are our top orthopedic surgeons. So if that's what's happening at that level, yes, I think it will be a quicker shift in academia. Usually what we see with most things is it takes a long time to build it, but then once it starts to build the momentum, before you know it, it takes off. And that's what I think is going to happen with this knees over toes movement. Is it's still fighting people's beliefs and understanding of science because they've been taught differently. But once they try it, and that's why I always push people, you want to hear about the backwards movement, the first step of knowing is trying. Otherwise, most people will never even get it done because they'll say, well, where's the study? Where's the study? Where's the study? And then by then, they've already spent all their energy worried about something that doesn't matter. What matters is you try something and figure out for yourself if it works or not. I can say that the backwards movement worked for me and the 20,000 athletes I've had the pleasure of working with in person, and it's the truth. But that doesn't mean just because it was a large pool and myself that benefited from it, that it will 100%, work for everybody. And I think it was, Paulo Quinn was one of those people, from my understanding, that would teach that law of 80%, where this backwards movement or this Paulo Quinn split squat is going to be amazing for 80%, but then that other 20% of the population, there might need to be a little tweaking or fine tuning because they tend to be outliers.
Coming up next.
World-class athletes can be strong going forwards and horrible going backwards. What I think is the number one cause of injuries is this imbalance that starts at a young age. Leaning into the weaknesses is how I've been able to get world-class results with myself and the athletes. It's important that you're asking where the study is, but it's also important that you ask, why isn't there a study? Injuries, not only can they ruin your playing career, they can destroy you psychologically. They can destroy you emotionally. My purpose in life is, it's not to get these young athletes millions of dollars in the pros, it's to keep them pain-free.
How do you, I guess you deal with some very expensive athletes and where making the wrong decision could be very, very, very costly. Like, how do you sort of deal with being on the edge of some of these new ideas and sort of convincing people that are managing them to say, look, we need to be doing this?
Yeah, I would encourage the viewer to not follow the route of the ATG for coaches. Don't jump into this just to grow your social media, just to try to rush to be considered an expert. Once again, with myself, whether it's the diet or the training, I will spend at least no less than 6 months doing it before I make any conclusions on what I feel like it works or what I think it's going to work for my athletes. And that I would encourage for a lot of people. The problem is that we built a society based off of instant gratification. So I give these answers to people and it's not what they want to hear. They don't want to hear that they have to spend 6 months, maybe even more, to really understand the program before they start coaching it or teaching themselves. But how can I ask these top athletes in the world who are putting their bodies on the line to do things in the weight room or on the court if I'm not willing to do those myself? And not just willing to do them once and then, do what a lot of people do once and then try to say I know what it is. Do it consistently over that 6 month span. Make it part of my lifestyle. And then I'll know, what Bruce Lee said. I'll know if it's working and I can keep it, or I know if I can ditch it.
What are some of the common injuries that you see both in sport and for everyday people? And what do you if you had to kind of put athletes and regular Joes together, are there any sort of common injuries that you're seeing related to this?
It's usually it's usually knee pain that is, it could be a result of a VMO that's not firing correctly, or a glute that's not firing correctly, but usually there's a weakness, there's an imbalance below the knee. So that's what I see. I see a lot of people that have knee pain, but a lot of times it's ankle or foot pain that they've just compensated for so long that they can't even identify that there's pain down there. That's what happened when I started going backwards. I had these knee injuries and knee pain for so long that I developed a way that if I didn't play basketball for long periods of time and I did certain workouts, I could avoid the feeling of it, coming back. But when I started doing the backwards movement, what kind of was freeing to me is I started to feel the pain come back a little bit. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I remembered I didn't do anything that, notable that would have gotten rid of that knee pain, so why did it go away? Well, I'm just glad that I'm feeling it now, because now now that I feel the pain, as I lean into what I think is going to work, I can see, okay, I had pain to start, and if I'm doing this for X 6 months period of time and it's gone, I can now use deductive reasoning to think some, or if not all, the things that I was doing are part of the answers going forward.
Where do you start then when you see, when you assess someone, they've got one of these common issues, athletes, regular people, they've got some issues with their knees. Like where do you start, and what are some of the very simple programs and things that maybe without coaching someone could have a look at?
So I run one test, and I'll give them the option of coming at me from 20 yards away and running forward. That's, a lot of times they want to show me, the athlete, oh, let me see, I want you to see me going forward. But the only thing I really am looking at is when they get to me, then they're doing the 20 yards backwards. And that 20 yards backwards is going to tell me everything I need to know, because world-class athletes can be strong going forwards and horrible going backwards. That doesn't mean that they're not great athletes. It just means that they have a higher likelihood of getting injured, because the backwards movement is what turns on those force absorbers. They're not as glamorous, but they prevent injuries. And not only the more force produced, the more force absorbed, the more force produced, but if we can stay healthier for longer, we won't get these increases in verticals in the off season and then decreases during the seasons. We can get slow, steady increases over time. But yeah, the short answer is walk, run, or whatever they can do backwards. And then I can tell, okay, yeah, we need to build strength here. Usually the answer is right there. Usually the answer is, okay, they need to spend time going backwards. But there's other things too that, I will implement to kind of test where they're at. One thing that is a little different than probably how most people run it is, I'm looking to strengthen the tibialis, the two muscles in the calf going, and then I'm working up. I'm not, other than the wrist and the neck and the calves that can be trained a little bit more, when it comes to the quads, the hamstrings, the glutes, the whatever, I'm not spending 20 sets on my glutes and 10 sets on hip flexion. I'm balancing everything out. So not just when I sprint for 20 yards myself and then I sprint backwards for 20 yards, it's the same concept for forward and back and side to side. All the reps are balanced, all the reps are even. If I can only do 10 tib raises on my right leg, then I'm only doing 10 on my left, and over time that will help rebalance not only myself, but this is what I think is the number one cause of injuries, is this imbalance that starts at a young age, when the first injury. And we see it because we're pushing so hard to specialize, whether it's basketball with millions of reps on our strong hand and not many on our other hand, soccer even now, even though it was commonly taught when I was growing up that you kicked with both legs, now they're letting kids get away with what's just comfortable for them, because some parents are not okay with pushing their kids into discomfort, even though there's a ton of growth to be had there.
Tell me about tib training, because I'm seeing on Instagram there's products out there now. You do a lot of it on your Instagram page. What's the appeal with that? Why is it important? What do we need to know about it?
Yeah, and I'll use terms like most important muscle to train, but that's not because I believe that muscle is more important than any other muscle. It's just because nobody's training it. So now it becomes the most important. Just like backwards movement is more important than forwards movement because nobody's doing it. And leaning into the weaknesses is how I've been able to get world-class results with myself and the athletes. It's going into the uncomfortableness of shooting with your opposite hand. For even NBA guys, that can be uncomfortable. But if you lean into it, the reward is much greater than if you avoid it.
Right. So with tib training, then explain. So what is it, and what are some of the common? Is there specific tools that you've got? Because I've seen you strapping stuff to your feet, and give us a little bit of a sort of deep dive on that.
Yeah. So it can be as simple as my buddy Zach Bitter. He's the fastest 100-mile runner in the world, and when I started working with him, he started putting a gallon jug of water around his, like the little handle around his toe. So then when your leg is flat on a bench, it's getting you that nice long stretch, and then you're contracting and building that strength. So you're building that full range and you're building that strength. You could do it with I've had athletes from poor areas of the world send me anything on their foot, pulling it up. But you can do it now. They have the tib bars, but you can do.
What's a tib bar?
It's just a bar that you can put on that will do the same thing as putting a kettlebell or strapping a resistance band with a dumbbell on your foot. It just makes it a little bit quicker to get things on and off.
Because Hammer Strength used to do one years ago, I remember, like years and years ago. It was like a little one that stood on the floor and sort of disappeared for a while.
It did. And that's once again, you get the academics that, where's the study? Where's the study on how tibialis is going to improve training? And I have to remind them, it's important that you're asking where the study is, but it's also important that you ask, why isn't there a study? Like with the Duke University, we could have offset a lot of knee pain if we just asked, okay, why are they saying this is the result from that study? And so much of us, and if I was around, I probably would have done the same, just accepted that as truth versus going out and finding it out for yourself, what is truth.
So with tib training then, is there any type of common exercises then that would train that muscle?
Yep. Yeah, the what you talked about, it still exists. I think there was a Lifetime in Minneapolis that had it. You can train it with one of the machines. Watson has I think a $500 tibialis machine. Those are great. You can use.
Sorry, maybe I asked that question wrong. So so let's say you don't have one of those specific machines.
Yep.
Is there anything, because it sounds like from what I understand, it sounds like it's a real specific movement that I'm not aware that any of my training would train, so it would probably be a weak muscle.
Yep.
Is there anything that it does, like if you're squatting or anything, is there any other common exercise that we've done for years that does engage that? Or is it just one of those things where you don't really hit it unless you specifically do it in a particular way?
I think that's with most things. The squat is a core workout, but if you elevate the heels, you're really focusing on the quads. Not that you're not going to get a stronger tibialis and soleus, but the reason why we're having injuries, part of the reason is if you're not scaling the strength of your tibialis, it doesn't matter if you're scaling the strength of your calf. It's going to lead to shin splints. It could lead to knee pain. So it's on some surfaces, it looks like rehab, or what athletes will say, oh, I need help with my knees, like come rehab it. But it's more of longevity training. You can't neglect training your tibialis because we lose strength over time. You can't neglect training your soleus because we lose strength over time. And then as you work your way up the body, the same thing, same rules apply. We lose strength and flexibility over time, so it's important that we stay strong, or we work towards rebuilding strength through length in these ranges, especially the tibialis, because the stronger you are at your base, whether you're religious or not, and you believe in God, there's a verse in Matthew talking about, it's a parable about building the house on rock versus building the house on sand. If you are not training your tibialis, you are essentially building your house on sand. You may be like some of these pro athletes I work with. You might have a fruitful career and make a lot of money without having any serious damage to later on in your career, but that's unlikely because those athletes are so gifted. Majority of people like me are going to have that injury early on, and if they don't address it, it's going to continue to get worse, and it could ultimately not only ruin their playing career, but this is something that people are very uncomfortable talking about. These injuries, not only can they ruin your playing career, they can destroy you psychologically. They can destroy you emotionally. We see athletes, there's an NBA player, I don't want to name him, he's homeless right now, and he's gone through coming back and getting help and then going back to homeless, but what it probably was is injuries and burnout, and nobody was willing to put the time and care into helping him, holding his hand and doing stuff. There's this common misconception that our young pro athletes are ready to handle hundreds of $millions after, especially coming from areas where they didn't have it. So now we're seeing it with the NBA guy getting investigated. You give a 23-year-old hundreds of millions of dollars. You don't put people around him that will keep him accountable. Well, you're setting them up for failure. At some point, I'm a little bit more liberal in my thoughts. I think that the team, the organization, the billionaire owners, and the people that are responsible for giving that money are more responsible for what's happening down in Memphis right now than what the athlete is doing himself. Because he's 23 years old, you gave him hundreds of millions of dollars. We can't keep acting like 23-year-olds are adults. As we progress in society, especially with social media, it seems like we're getting less mature. So 23, a couple hundred years ago, you might have already had 5 kids, and you might even be on your way to being a grandparent. But The reality is now, 23, you might get to 30 and still be a child in the way you think and the way you make your decisions. That's not an attack on you. That's just more of a product of the society that we've created. And that's why education in America is dropping at a rapid rate, because we're going away from what is uncomfortable. What made America great was we were doing things that were uncomfortable. We're bringing in cultures that clashed previously. We're trying to gel. We're one of the only countries in the world that are still trying to do that. Most of the countries are just, okay, we're our people. We don't care to mix with other people. America has, done a lot of great things, but we need to get back to some of the basic things that we were doing to make it great. Otherwise, there's going to be no rebuilding of our strength, of our future. The athletes, if we don't start pushing backwards movement and tibialis raises, maybe as unglamorous as they may be, if we don't start pushing that, everybody as a community, it's not just me, it's not just Ben, it's not just these new coaches that are finding out about it. If we don't come together as a community and push these things, we might not have sports in the next 20, 30 years. We might just be sitting at stadiums watching AI robots play sports.
I like the way you connected all that together. That's a great, but it makes sense. I can follow the logic. Coming back to tib training though, for regular people that get a bit older, what could be some of the things, like you've got knee pain, but I'm just trying to sort of figure it out myself. Like, do I leave this interview and I'm like, right, somehow I've got to start doing that. What other risks? Is there any other, is there back issues? Is there other issues that because I guess as you say, if you've not got a strong base, it all kind of goes up the body. Anything else problems that could be created if you have an issue there?
Yeah, and that's what I spend most of the time when I'm consulting some of these top physical therapists is, hey, you had issues with the knee and you're just addressing the VMO, the muscles around the knee, but you're not strengthening what's under it. So same thing with the hip. Okay, you maybe tore your hip, you tore your hamstring, but you're still neglecting strengthening from the ground. So we don't know that with certainty that hamstring injury is because it's a weak hamstring. It could have been a weak tibialis. It could have been a weak soleus. Same thing with the back, even all the way to the neck. So now I'm encouraging all these physical therapists, yes, you're going to keep addressing the muscles that are around the injury, but you have to address everything under it too. You can no longer, we're at the epidemic right now because of neglecting. And we're neglecting young athletes, we're neglecting athletes when they burn out, and we're neglecting our bodies. Not doing something is rarely the answer. We have to be comfortable being uncomfortable as a society again. That is what makes us great, not just as Americans, but as human as a whole.
So I'm going to move up the body. Hips. What have you learned from hips? I sit down a lot, as most people probably do, and have very, very tight hip flexors. Back pain, probably because I'm sitting, just because a lot of cases you can't get around it. So what do you learn in terms of your style of training for hips, and what are some of the best movements that you're doing or stretches, etc. in that area? Yeah,
so I really like the couch stretch, and I don't know if I can show you some of this stuff right now with the way the cameras are set up. Can I try it?
Yeah.
So you don't need your foot on the wall. If you want that tibialis stretch, you want to put your foot flush against the wall, but this can help just target that quad and hip, and most people are tight in this area.
So for those who are not watching, who are listening on audio, so you got your foot up on a chair, you got your knee on the floor, and then you're standing on your foot, and leg raised, your right leg.
And for some of maybe the elderly, you're going to have to stack more and more cushion under that knee, whereas a younger athlete, especially kids, they can go on a hard wood floor, and I wouldn't suggest that, but yes, for the people that have really bad knees, 2-3 pillows is not going to hurt you. It's going to get in there. The key is when you're here to not curve that back. You really want to try to tuck that pelvis and lengthen that hip flexor. So not only do you just feel the stretch in your quad, but you're feeling it all the way up the hip flexor. Because this length is very important. And then something like the Poliquin split squat puts time under tension where it's extended. And then something that I will teach with the hip flexion is putting a weight like on the foot and then driving the knee up. And so that way you're strengthening flexion, extension, and you're working on lengthening the hips as well.
So that Poliquin split squat, is that, do you prioritize that type of movement then for a number of reasons, including hips and for people who have been sitting for a long time?
Yeah, whether it's the Poliquin split squat, I like a modified pistol. where you're not focused on that front leg being extended. I like it where you're on the edge of something like even like a sturdy table. That would be a bad example, but one of your Escape Fitness plyo boxes, the one foot is sturdily on it, and that's the one you're going to work. And instead of the pistol where your foot's extended, you let the other one hang naturally, so that way you can attack one limb at a time. And the Poliquin split squat modified pistol, they're important because of the imbalance. So as we hammer single leg, we're able to rebalance, but not only the rebalancing effect. Now the studies are showing with the training, if we do unilateral, the sum is greater than bilateral. So if we squat 2 legs, we might be able to squat 500 pounds. But if we do 1 leg at a time, that might be 300 pounds, 400 pounds per leg. Now our total sum is 800 versus 500.
I've interviewed a few people that have talked about that, and I've started to incorporate that in my training. I used to do regular squats.
Yep.
Now I've started to do a lot, pistol squats and a lot of single leg movement. And so is that what you're recommending is to be doing more the single leg?
Yeah, not just for the purposes of rebalancing, but for the purposes of pushing your body to do more than it would do bilaterally.
Right.
So getting that lump sum bigger than it would be bilaterally. And then most sports, especially the sports I work with, you're operating either 1 leg at a time, or when you're 2 legs, your stance is not always even, unless your defense is sliding, but even then they get off. So I don't see how bilateral training, even if it wasn't less of a sum than the unilateral, I don't see how it translates to sports, to athletic movement as good as single arm, single leg stuff.
It makes sense, I guess, if you're, the squat is obviously the common exercise, but I suppose very, very rarely, unless you're specifically training for weightlifting, very rarely are you're in that position where your full force is going equally at the same time.
Yep.
What do you think about regular squats?
I think they're fine. It's like Cal has said, if you take your regular 1 rep max squat, for you, I will say 500. For me, maybe 250. I'm not the strongest, but I'm athletic. If you take that 500-pound squat that you have, and you want to duplicate the forces of running and jumping that it would be on the court, on the mat as a UFC, or wherever it is your sport is, you have to times that force by upwards of 8 to 10 times greater than what you're producing with that squat. So once again, I look at that and I say, okay, if that's the case with the force, then unless your sport is powerlifting, CrossFit, ATG workouts, whatever that sport is, unless that's your sport, there's no need to be pushing high numbers in the weight room if the force is so much greater on the field, on the court. Now it ties back to, okay, I don't love the term rehab, but now it shows, okay, I use the weight room to supplement almost like almost like creatine, or HGH. I use it to supplement the sport. It is not the sport, and this is something that the viewers, the listeners, especially the athletes, you need to listen to. It's not just for basketball, MMA, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, or whatever. If you're playing a sport, a team sport, that is where you put your time and energy. Everything else supplements it. The nutrition, the sleep, the training. That is to supplement, because nothing for myself gives me as much joy as playing sports with others. The workouts are great. I love working out with people. I love training athletes. I love working out myself. But it's part of my enjoyment for the working out is knowing that I'm bulletproofing my joints and I'm potentially getting better athletically for my sport. And that's where I push these athletes, the viewers and listeners, and sometimes it comes out of laziness, don't give up your sport to make lifting the sport. Continue to play whatever you love. And if you don't have a sport and you like lifting and that's your sport, that's great. I'm not saying that lifting isn't a sport, but if you have a sport, you have a passion, it's yours. Don't lose it. Don't give up on it just because working out hard is easier. That working out hard, it may make you feel good, but what I look to do is I look to work out to stimulate these anabolic hormone release. I'm not trying to annihilate anybody. Anybody off the street can get you to annihilate your body, and people want examples. Okay, go run a sprint. All right, you're tired? Okay, run again. Okay, you're tired? Run again. So anybody can duplicate that, but very few people can find the minimal dosage that will be effective for that athlete and then be able to administer that and then increase it slightly over time.
What about back? That's another common one. Like, how are you programming it out? Is there any sort of go-to things that, again, probably are not well used? Is the sort of reverse walking, is that also helpful, for example?
Reverse walking is great for the posture, great for the core. But I do like doing seated good mornings. Once again,
I saw you on your Instagram doing a really strange version of the good mornings.
Yep. So because we're able to isolate the back. Yes, we'll get a good stretch in our hamstrings, our glutes, and our groin when we're doing the seated good morning. But we're able to isolate that back, working those extensors, and then working in a flex position as we get low, which is not just important for our wrestler MMA guys who are attacking that way, but for basketball. I look back at footages of Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan. When they're attacking and they're low, their back is basically parallel with their thigh and sometimes touching it. So that movement, and then also the Jefferson curl, which has been around for a while, where it's like a roly-poly and you're segmenting your vertebrae down to the bottom of a deadlift, and then you're slowly rolling your back up. Those two are huge. And then another one that is not maybe as obvious to the people that come to my page and see those videos, the QLs. The QLs, a lot of times athletes will say, man, I got a messed up lower back, this, that, and the other thing. Once I spend time with them, a lot of times I realize that is a tight and a weakened QL. And it is so deep in the abs, it feels like the lower back. And same with the psoas. Sometimes that lower back pain can be a super tight psoas, that's super tight hip flexor that's pulling you out of a natural spine. So the seated good morning, Jefferson curl, those are the obvious. The QL work,
what kind of stuff you're doing for the QL?
QL would be you can do anything basic. You could do just a standing side crunch. Now this is where you could use the back extension 45 degree and be angled and do the side. And I've shown some of this, but that's, there's another good stretch where you're in child's pose, your hands are out, and then you walk them to one side, and you'll feel that good stretch in the lat, and then all the way down into the QL.
Because I'm going to now sort of use this as ask some personal questions that hopefully will be relevant to people with back injuries. But I have a morning routine where I have to do a bunch of similar things to what you've spoke about. I do a bunch of stuff on the ball. Stretches, some strengthening stuff, some kind of core stuff, and because when I get up in the morning out of bed, I've got pain straight away, like it's there. But within sort of 2 or 3 minutes, 10 to 15 reps or a few things, it's just totally gone. Absolutely, as I've got no problem. And so I'm wondering, when you're doing this, do you get to a stage where if you have, and you mentioned also like in, what is it called in here? Psoas, yeah. Again, if I have someone that does some massage work, they can kind of really get in there. Again, that tends to get rid of it. So obviously there's some tightness, but it seems to just come back every time you stay still for a while. Is that just to be expected, and you just have to now get to the stage where you'll just have to kind of move to get over it? Or can you get to a stage where you correct yourself, where you no longer get that pain when you stay still?
Yeah, I think anything that can, within reason, anything that can be broken down can be rebuilt. So with your back pain, it's good that you're getting relief when you're doing these exercises, but the way I would work with you over time is to get you to the point where there's no pain ever. And that's the goal for everybody. That goes back to my purpose and what my purpose in life is. It's not to get these young athletes millions of dollars in the pros, it's to keep them pain-free. So if they want to make millions of dollars, they can, but if they want to just live a normal life and have a good family, they can do that pain-free as well, because the physical pain, and I know this from 20 years of injuries and pain, the physical pain can bleed into the emotions and the minds, and it can blur it. So sometimes you make bad life decisions based off of physical pain that you've been harboring, that you're compensating for, so you're not even acknowledging that it's still there, but it lingers.
Yeah, I didn't think about it that. You gave that example earlier, and kind of a real extreme one. But I suppose when you do have that pain, and then it's like, okay, I've got to make this decision, I've got to make that decision. You are heavily influenced by, if you wake up and you're in a bad position, that weights, even though it's a few degrees, it kind of weights how you respond to certain things. And I suppose if you took that to its extreme, you could make some really bad decisions because of pain.
So. You might get extremely drunk after a football game in Vegas and drive and kill yourself and other people. And that might be directly related to the physical pain. But once again, as well, if we don't have this tender, loving care around athletes, around our workouts, around our own bodies, we won't be able to find these answers. You know, we're just looking for instant gratification, or if we're just looking to push through things, we won't know. We have to listen to ourselves. And the one thing I like to, you know, the one quote that my uncle said to me as a young kid that didn't make sense until a few years ago: the stronger the pack, the stronger the wolf, the stronger the wolf, the stronger the pack. So if we bulletproof our community, whether fitness, athletic, we're all going to benefit from it. You know, and right now we have a lot of people running programs and doing things on social media just for monetary gain. And I think they're operating off of being scared and being conditioned into being scared. I think that's what people end up pulling back and giving less from, is a fear, you know, an unknown fear. You would have to ask them exactly what that's from. But even myself, when I first started social media, I was thinking, okay, I don't want to give away everything. You know, I've had in the past people take ideas and make millions of dollars of it. I don't want to give everything. But then the more I did social media these last 2 years, and when I really started to grow, when people started to reach out and tell, okay, that your stuff is helping, then that solidified my doubts of like, okay, maybe I should be charging everybody for everything. Then with the feedback, I was able to realize, okay, not charging allows not only for these other companies to make millions of dollars, but more importantly, it allows these young athletes to get pain free, and then they can choose to do whatever they want with their life. And I try to tell the athletes that I've helped, okay, you've gotten the results you want. Now look around your direct community, find the people in pain, and see if they're willing to accept your help. Because I'm not God, Ben's not God, you know, and maybe we're all God, but nobody's greater than the next person. So if we don't look out for each other, we're going to continue to be in an injury epidemic. We're going to continue to have injuries at every level. But it's conversations like this, open-minded conversations, which is really going to help offset this dark future that we're casting on on the world right now. But with all the doom and gloom that social media has, I do remind people there is people like Greg Judy, who does the YouTube. There's people that they may be harder to find, but there is genuine people that are providing real value on social media. And you brought quite a few of them onto your podcast. I went into George Foreman's gym, and that's where I initially met you. So a lot of this stuff you're doing, it's just finding, okay, who are the other people that are willing to do this stuff? Because it's not easy. It takes time. You know, it takes being uncomfortable. You know, it's
and unfortunately, the good stuff, unless it's controversial and it divides people, it doesn't play to the algorithm. And and you know, I've been doing this 5 years. We know now, if you really want to get the views, you kind of know what to do and how to position it. It's just, is that really what you're about? I suppose that's not what we're about. It's not what you're about. No. But I guess it's very easy to gloss over some of the useful information because it just doesn't hook the algorithm the way that kind of thing does. But I guess that's something that
Zuckerberg needs to work on. Elon's helping with Twitter now. Hopefully they're starting to make that shift over to Facebook and Instagram, because you provide value on Twitter right now, it's usually rewarded. I've provided value millions of times on Facebook, Instagram, even TikTok, and I can't tell you why sometimes it's rewarded. Sometimes I go super viral, and then sometimes I'll have a video on TikTok that will do a couple hundred views. I cannot tell you why, but
yeah. Well, coming back to the body, then there's some also stuff I was reading about the neck. Again, it's something else that I don't really think about, and obviously it's something that you feel important. So why do we need to be thinking about working out, training the neck? Explain that a little bit.
Yeah, I just look at it as part of the spine. You know, and it's not as much of the fact that we're getting pulled forward with phones, with TVs. Text neck is a name. Text neck, I think, is the name that they're saying.
Wow. I saw the picture I saw on Instagram where it's kind of like shows how many degrees over and the weight.
And the weight, yep, which is true. But I think it's more of, if you address it as part of the neck, there's more truth and understanding there, because your cervical spine, thoracic, lumbar. So it's not that I call the seated good morning and the Jefferson curl neck exercises. They will strengthen a little indirectly, but then I will go and I will do some reverse extension work, whether it's with the fighters who have that savage-looking head brace with the chains
that. My brother's got.
stuff.
Well, there's one that's kind of like a head harness, which you can.
Yep, iron neck.
Iron neck.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
And I like the iron neck, but sometimes with some of this stuff, the more bells and whistles doesn't always mean better. So I found with that traditional like wrestling harness that you'll see those guys wear, I found because they have connections here, here, here. You're not able to do as much of the rotational stuff, but you're able to really strengthen in extension and flexion. You can go side to side, so it covers the main movers.
And if you're recommending people do some neck training, what's the sort of frequency and kind of dosage that you recommend?
Well, they say it's high endurance, just like the forearms, hands, and ankles. So you theoretically could do it 2, 3, 4 times a week. And I know some people would take that and depend on how their genetics are, they could maybe even do it 6, 7 times a week. It's the same thing we see with the sled, with how quick you can recover because it's concentric, and how quick you can recover from those slow twitch. You could do it more. Now, I always tie it back to what we had said earlier, where the sport is the sport. So unless we have a severe imbalance that needs to be corrected quickly, I won't hit the tibs, I won't hit the neck more than twice a week. And within those sessions, I'm not going to go over 50, 60, 70 reps. And depending on the state in which my neck or the athlete's neck is, I might only do a few reps. And like you said, with the image of the
Tex neck.
Yep, the Tex neck. The other side of that is strength radiates at 15 degrees. So if you're stuck here, and you're getting all that force, if you strengthen a little bit, pain-free here, over time, the law of 15 degrees, you'll be able to restore this full range of motion pain-free. Same thing we see with the joints. I would not suggest somebody drops into a flat ground Poliquin split squat. I would suggest they start with their front foot elevated. And this is probably why people are more prone to squatting than doing a split squat, because there's more that can go wrong with the split squat. It's a little easier to program, coach, and perform a normal squat.
With the general person that's not an athlete, is it generally a good thing for you just to be doing some stuff for your neck for what are you getting? Is it just like helping with your posture, preventing sort of pain in certain places? Like what would be that?
And then there's the people that aren't in a sport, they'll comment on the neck being a source of, if they strengthen it and lengthen it, they lose. They can get rid of migraines, they can get rid of like tension headaches. A lot of that rest of digest runs through there, so there's something to be said about that. But like with a lot of this stuff, there's a lot greater minds out there that exist that can explain this probably in a little more detail. I probably seem a little rogue saying it, but most of what I do because it worked and it felt good. And so then science can come on the back end and explain it, but I don't have the luxury, nor does anybody, I believe, have the luxury of waiting for 10 to 20 years of research to be considered legitimized. So, now even in the few years I've been preaching the knees over toes, when I started and you Googled it, it would say, never get into knees over toes. Now when you Google it, it's saying, new things are showing that knees over toes is, if done correctly, is good for your knee health. So that's what I'm seeing with all this other stuff, the backwards movement, the neck training. Now I'll add a little something probably a little more interesting. For those non-athletes, they'll still be training at the frequency as the world-class athletes. The only difference is when they leave training with me, they will go on the court, they will go on the field, they will train more. Whereas the typical person, when they're done training, that's all they'll do. But one, I want the person to feel good, and two, they need to be pain-free to play with their kids, to play with their loved ones. You don't realize how debilitating injuries are until you've gone through them, and that's where there's a little bit of disconnect between what is considered a traditional athlete versus a non-athlete. Usually athletes, if they push themselves, they've had 1, 2, maybe even more injuries, whereas a normal person, if they're not pushing themselves, they might not have an injury. But I also go back to what that doctor said. If you're injured and you're working out, your life expectancy is going to be greater than if you're not injured and you're not working out. So once again, leaning into that discomfort, leading into what may be perceived as pain at the time, can yield the results that we're looking for.
Just thinking it logically, and I've never really spent a lot of time thinking about training those certain muscles, but I guess if you are working out, you work out most of the major muscles, you don't work out those, but just the thing like the text neck idea, I suppose we're sitting down, we're on computers, so generally your neck's just kind of going in that direction anyway. It's probably weak, and certain, it's, you know, like your hips in the same way. So I suppose anything that I could do just to kind of, you know, I'm going to be thinking about it tonight in the gym, like just to re-strengthen that a little bit, it's probably not a bad idea. Same for TIB training. Never really thought about doing it, but I suppose when you realize how everything works up to your hips, back, etc., then probably not being quite as imbalanced, because you certainly train the back, you know, calves, quads, etc., hamstrings. That logically sounds as though it makes sense, and you'd probably want to incorporate that in some level. So they're kind of fairly logical things, but they're not, I suppose, common and sexy.
Yeah, they're seen as rogue, but when, you know, if we remove ourselves from the fast-paced life we're living and we look at this stuff, it's not that rogue. You know, walking backwards is probably as least rogue as you could prescribe to somebody, but it's being pitted on social media as rogue. That's more of just a narrative. And now I don't even know if that's the general public pushing that narrative or the algorithm pushing that narrative. But that's something to look at. Now with the neck, one more thing I would add is as we sit, the metabolic rate drops, so you're not burning, and that could be a source of buildup of hypertension and pain. Now University of Houston in December put out an article about the soleus push-up. So as we sit here, every 5-10 seconds, I will lift my heels and I will drop them. And if I do this throughout the day, my metabolic rate goes to the roof. I'm burning fat, I'm building muscle. And this is something they just put out in December. And I've been preaching soleus training because the soleus absorbs the most force of any muscle in the human body. And the kids on social media, where's the research? That's not a research study. That's just a reading done on the body. Majority of the load, standing, running, jumping, is through the soleus. And it makes sense. That soleus is right here. You know, once again, it goes back to the base. So a weakened base is going to lead to injuries. And now with University of Houston coming out with this soleus push-up, this could be a solution for a lot of people with neck pain. You know, it might not be just, you know, it might not be even going into the neck. Some of this posture stuff with the walking backwards, I wonder how much upper body work you really need. Every pound of upper body mass, whether it's fat or muscle, is an extra 4 pounds of stress on the knees. So I don't like athletes. It's not that I don't see, especially in basketball, I don't see a direct relation between athletes having a bigger upper body and being more successful. If anything, I see the opposite of that, LeBron being the outlier, but Kevin Durant, Steph Curry can deadlift 500 pounds. He doesn't have a big upper body. Kevin Durant, one of the greatest of all time, doesn't have a big upper body. Jordan, before Tim Grover, when he was his most athletic, didn't have a big upper body. So it's one of those things that, yes, we could do some great things by going into that neck and working it and getting that range back itself, but maybe, you know, looking into this soleus push-up and increasing our metabolic rate as we sit as a nation and as a world. Maybe that's...
And that's just literally sort of moving up on your toes while you're sitting.
Yep, because they call this the soleus the second heart. I guess, you know, one of the roles is to pump back blood to the heart.
Right.
So activating...
Is that also your lymph as well? Does that trigger the lymph movement through you?
That's what I understand. Now, that's, once again, for smarter minds than me. For me, it's like, okay, I've been training my soleus for years now, and now they're coming on the back end explaining it scientifically, which is great, but I'm going to continue to do it. You know, it was working before, and it's continuing to work, so I'm going to do it. If it stopped working, I would stop doing it. Even if the study said it's working, if I have a ton of athletes and we're all doing it and it's not working, I'm going to stop it. It goes back to the Bruce Lee quote. If it's not meaningful and you can't be, you know, don't use it, neglect it. So I'm not afraid to go against what people say it works. If I try it and it doesn't work, I'll just, you know, I don't need to vocalize that I'm going against it. Okay, I'm not doing that anymore. Like a 90-degree squat. I don't think there's anything wrong with a 90-degree squat, but we see a lot of more benefits when you get into full knee bend. So I see a need for quarter squat because most of sports is played in a quarter squat, but then also that full squat. I don't see as much where that 90 degrees kicks in. And, there's nothing wrong with Joel Seedman. I think, once again, he is like the rest of us, which he is trying to survive and build, a business, and who knows what legacy he's trying to build if he has a family. So I don't necessarily fault him for some of the things that he's doing and the way he's doing it. But yeah, the 90-degree stuff, I don't see it. I think that these simple getting into full knee bend, getting the body moving, if you're stuck in a chair at your work doing these soleus push-ups, these are the low-hanging fruit that we should be collecting. So much of it is we're going through as a society and we're getting hit in the face by this low-hanging fruit, and we're not stopping to grab it. We're going and we're climbing up the tree and hurting ourselves, breaking our knees, trying to grab this, this forbidden fruit that doesn't need to be tasted.
My final one then, on the sort of body part side of things, is shoulders. It's an area problematic for a lot of people, and I guess in sport as well.
Yep.
So what's your approach around that?
Yeah, it's like majority of the rest of the body. I'm looking at what we can do in reverse, because with our throwers, they're always here. So now even with these weighted ball programs that are becoming more popular with whoever, Trevor Bauer, whoever's pushing it, they're doing considerable reps where they're letting the ball go backwards in external rotation. So we spend a lot of time with the athletes in external rotation. Not to mean that we don't do any internal rotation, whether it's a fly or a press. Just like we don't stop doing all forward moving when we start doing backwards moving. But once again, it comes to that situation where we're not neglecting anything. I've never seen neglecting work in any area of life. So neglecting a certain muscle, a certain exercise, I don't see how that, that benefits long term. And that's kind of just where I'm at.
And so you're thinking of, for shoulder training, is thinking about how you could, what
decelerates
it,
what controls the arm, what prevents it from just exploding off when you're throwing 100 miles per hour. And then the non-obvious, and this is where it's a little bit spicier, especially for the academics, is if you're throwing and you want to go at 100 miles per hour, you are doing yourself a huge disjustice or inservice by, I don't even know if those words are real, by not throwing with the other hand. And I can't tell you how many people I've told, even with Tiger Woods, maybe some of the back issue is a guilty conscience because the spinal cord runs through the conscious and he was living a very wild lifestyle. But I think it's a little bit less of that. I think that's going to weigh on his mind more and his emotions. I think the back is more because he's producing world-class force going this way, and I haven't heard that he's really practicing and working on the other way. So whether it's throwing for the shoulders, kicking for the knees, jumping for the legs, these imbalances are the cause, or what seems to be the cause of injury and pain. Even with Derrick Rose only jumping off his left foot or his right two leg, he ultimately was always set up to tear his right knee, which he ended up doing. And now, as a basketball community, as a sports community, we had the youngest MVP of all time play better in his first 5 years than he did the rest of his career because of people were unwilling to rebalance him. So same thing with the shoulders, not just externally and reverse engineering the movement, but balancing out reps. So now when you hear this and you're a young aspiring pitcher, you don't go throw 1,000 reps with your left or your opposite hand and just be like, okay, this one's good, so I don't need to throw with it. You're still going to balance it out because the studies say with the two hemispheres and the way they communicate, the stronger and more fine-tuned I am with my opposite hand or limb, leg, whatever it is, the stronger and more fine-tuned that I will be with my strong hand. And this is something that they taught us in academia with the lifting. I forget what the law is, but if you lift a bicep curl with your right hand for 30 reps, even if you didn't do for your left bicep, there is a little bit of strength increase in the left side. So I think there's something going on there with the opposite hand. But for me, rebalance, rebuild. It's just as simple as it is, whether it's the forward that needs to be rebalanced with the backwards, whether it's the shoulders that need to be rebalanced going back themselves, reverse engineering them, or just rebalancing them off of the reps. We don't see as much of this as prevalent in MMA, and I'm seeing that with those guys because a lot of times they're getting their reps in both hands, both legs.
I guess a lot of times, a lot of the training is their move, their, what is it called? They're constantly,
Yep.
And I suppose the more that's sort of advanced, the more you see that they have to kind of be totally being able to surprise, totally sort of strong in every different dimension they can be, because they've got to constantly adjust. So that's an interesting sport, really, when you look at it, because I suppose it's the most extreme. Everything goes, and every little edge you've got, you don't want to have any weaknesses, really, do you?
Yep.
Must be quite fascinating. My kids and that are into jiu-jitsu, and it's got me watching a lot more UFC and understanding it a little on a slightly different level. And it's you can go really, really deep just on one modality in that area.
And that even goes back to that that split squat, getting into full knee bend. And this is something that I didn't know if I wanted to mention it yet, because I'm still in that first 6-month trial period. But these deep range plyos, where you're in full knee bend and you're working on jumping just a couple inches, so you're not coming out into extension, which is majority of what plyometrics is extension work. So you're working that deeper range, and the UFC Bellator guys are eating it up, because they're not seeing, okay, I'm going to get stronger and with lesser range. They're thinking, okay, I'm on my back and my knees are bent to my chest. If I can produce good power here, I've just taken it to the next level. So there's certain things like that. And another thing not to go along with the deep range plyos that I've been playing with, and maybe we'll check in 6 months, see how it's going, but reverse single leg tuck jumps. So pushing off one leg, driving the knee, and then you land on the opposite leg. And then when that becomes easy enough, you push off, lift the knee, and then land on the same leg, but you're going backwards. So it's extremely intense. And I would suggest, if you're trying this out for the first time, just do a little jump back. Don't try to push it too hard.
Right. So what's next for you then? What, you sound like you got a lot of these interesting experiments going on.
Yeah.
What's your plans for the next sort of couple of years?
Maybe you would be better for guiding me through this, because you're much more successful than I am. But
I wouldn't say that, but
well, I believe it. Hopefully I'll be as successful as you. But now I'm losing my train of thought.
So where are you thinking about going then?
So for me, it has always been one of my biggest struggles to try to put myself out 5-10 years. Where will I be? If I had done that up until this point, I wouldn't have met the certain people I've met. I wouldn't have gotten the mentors I met or have gotten. So even though I'm 35 and I need to start thinking about maybe a family, a little more consistency, to me, I like staying in a little bit more of, the world is divided between the chaos and order. I like to flirt a little bit more in the chaos. Jordan Peterson talks about this a little bit, but I don't know what he has to say about that specifically. I'm sure that some people like to err on the side of order and some people like to err on the side of chaos. But I find I'm my best when I'm doing something wild, like living with a fighter preparing for a title fight. That is extremely uncomfortable, but I get the best results for myself and others by putting myself in these positions. Now, it doesn't necessarily set up for long-term guarantees, but the way I like to follow trends. The way that the world is headed, nothing is guaranteed. You might be creating one of the top fitness programs in the world, and then the next minute you're being cut out of it and it's being passed off on like you didn't have anything to do with it. So those type of situations wake me up to being, okay, this is what I have to do today, and this is what I might be doing tomorrow. But other than that, I don't know.
I guess it's probably more of a dance where instead of it being one, you're up in the chaos and then you're in the opposite, and a bit like the body probably. You kind of need them all. You're never really in balance, and the job is to kind of constantly
create that balance. Yeah, just like the workouts. Yeah, because to be one of anything for too long or too much, it can be a disservice. That's the best culture I've seen when I've traveled the world, worked with athletes. The best culture is the one that really embraces all the cultures. Now, America's supposed to do that, and in some areas of America they do. But then you'll see some of even when I was over in Italy visiting my family, certain areas of Italy are very open to other cultures. Now, certain areas are still very closed off, and we see that with some of the European countries and some of the other Asian companies. countries. But we are starting to see a little bit more shift of what America was built on, which is combining these cultures. And that's what I see as the best thing. That's why I'm able to learn about backwards movement, because that came from Muhammed Ali, who is now I probably need to be corrected, but it was an Islamic black male. Was he? He changed his name for religious
Yeah, he was
purposes.
Cassius Clay. I think he became Muslim. And
Muslim.
Muslim.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, if I was closed off to thinking my culture had all the answers, I wouldn't have been able to find that from him. And Kobe lived in Italy, and some of that living in Italy influenced him to play a little soccer, which we're now starting to see that soccer, using your foot coordination in a sport like soccer, transfers well to other sports like basketball, hockey, something where you're using your hands a little bit more. So that's the one thing I also push the athletes to do too, is go around and study other people's cultures, embrace the things that make you the same, and then celebrate the uniquenesses, not in the sense that you're trying to stunt on the other person or flex on them, but in the sense that, okay, we both have uniqueness. Together, we can celebrate that and do something much greater than if we're just, trying to go fast alone. We'd rather go far together.
Yeah, I think it sort of supports that idea that we talked about earlier with social media. It makes sense for where we are in the world to say there's absolutes, there's this or there's that. But in most cases, and even, I've spoke to a lot of people, and most of them say, well, like the polyquin, yeah, in a lot of cases that works. But in some cases, this works. So it's like both apply depending on where you are and what's happening. So I think that's, not that sexy, because everybody wants that one great idea, but it doesn't really exist.
No.
So look, my final question, David.
Yes.
Escape Your Limits is about escaping what you've believed is impossible and gone to make possible. What would be a memorable example of you escaping your own personal limits?
That's a great question. I guess there was a time where there was, some of these orthopedic surgeons that were looking at my knee saying, not only will you never be 100% pain-free, but you won't be able to play basketball again. So that was around the age of my late teens, 20s, as I'm going into college sports. And I can speak to the athletes in the sense of hearing that from somebody who's supposed to be one of the brighter minds in your world or your community. Hearing something like that can really tear you down, can really, put you in a dark place, because if we can't trust the doctors to give us good information, then, who can we trust? So for me, it was escaping the limitations that others, specifically doctors, were putting on me, and going and finding out, okay, can I do what they said I couldn't do? And then now that I'm able to do that, can I share that information without falling into the pressures of doing clout social media, of not worried about providing value, only worried about growing? That's my new limitations is, okay, now maybe it's flirting that line of a little bit attention grabbing and also providing value, but in order for me to escape the limits of where we're at with the community, I have to continue to provide value no matter what happens in the future, whether I take over the whole strength conditioning program for the UFC or what it may be. I have to continue to provide value. I cannot sell myself out. I can make money, I can be smart business-wise, but I cannot sell myself out to only putting out pieces of information that will help the athlete for a short term, and then ultimately they will fail and then they need to buy my program. I will never do something like that. I will only put out what is going to be helpful in that time for me and the athletes, and so hopefully, it resonates with the rest of everybody.
David, thank you very much for your time. It's been an interesting conversation.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you've got any value from it whatsoever, then please do us a favor, like, subscribe, tell somebody, and that will help us to be able to continue to do more of these and help you escape your own personal limits. Thanks for listening.